A sharp warning has once again come from Moscow as Russia intensifies its criticism of U.S. actions toward Iran and frames Washington's pressure campaign as both futile and dangerous for the wider world economy. Russia's ambassador to Iran, Alexei Dadov, delivered the message in Tehran on Tuesday, arguing that the United States is repeating a failed approach and misreading how Iran is likely to respond under threat. In a pointed rebuke of Washington's posture, he said the U.S. still does not grasp a basic reality. He said, "I think the U.S. has not yet understood that it is futile to use the language of force against Iran." Dadov's remarks came as the confrontation around Iran's coastline and the Strait of Hormuz escalated into a new phase, with the United States beginning enforcement of what it has described as a naval blockade targeting traffic in and out of Iranian ports. The move follows weeks of hostilities and a fragile ceasefire that has been strained by continued incident at sea and by the collapse of renewed diplomatic talks. Speaking in Tehran, the Russian ambassador said the conflict has now dragged on for more than 40 days, which he characterized as a U.S.-Israeli military campaign against Iran. He condemned the latest attacks, offered condolences to families of those killed, and urged Washington to reconsider its reliance on military pressure. His message was that coercion would not produce the political outcome the U.S. seeks, and that continued escalation increases the risk of miscalculation. In Moscow, the Kremlin underscored those concerns a day earlier, warning that any attempt to strangle Iran's maritime access could ricochet through global energy markets. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov described the likely market consequences of a blockade in stark terms, while also signaling that Russia was not prepared to speculate about operational details without clearer information about the U.S. plan. Asterisk, he said, well, most likely such actions will continue to negatively affect international markets. This can be assumed with a high degree of certainty. However, many details here remain unclear and not fully understood. Therefore, I would prefer to refrain from making any substantive comments at this time. After Peskov also said Russia hopes the standoff does not tip back into open armed conflict, presenting the situation as unresolved and unstable, with both sides positioned in ways that make escalation easier than de-escalation. The Kremlin's warning landed as Washington confirmed that U.S. forces would begin blocking shipping traffic in and out of Iranian ports starting at 10 a.m. Washington time on April 13th. The action, framed by the U.S. as an instrument of pressure, has been widely viewed by observers as a high-risk attempt to squeeze Iran economically while avoiding a broader war. Analysts have warned that restricting Iran's exports, especially oil, could tighten supply and raise prices, and that any Iranian retaliation on in the Strait of Hormuz could disrupt one of the world's most important energy corridors. In public comments, U.S. President Donald Trump defended the policy as both necessary and effective, describing Iran as militarily degraded and claiming the blockade would stop Tehran from selling oil. In one of his most combative statements, he argued that Iran's naval capabilities had been shattered, while emphasizing the U.S. deadline for action. Asterisk, he said, I would say it's holding well. Their military is destroyed. Their whole Navy is underwater. You know that 158 ships are gone. Their Navy's gone. Most of their mine droppers are gone. We have a lot of people. As you know, at 10 o'clock tomorrow, we have a blockade going into effect. That'll be 10 o'clock tomorrow. Other nations are working so that Iran will not be able to sell oil, and that would be very effective. He also suggested that the U.S. is positioned to absorb shocks because of domestic energy production and claimed that some VESI LS were seeking to exploit American oil supplies as the crisis deepened in the Gulf. The immediate flashpoint remains the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway linking the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and the broader Indian Ocean. It is a route through which a major share of the world's seaborne oil has historically transited, making it uniquely sensitive to military threats, maritime incidents, and political brinkmanship. According to the U.S. military's own messaging, the blockade is focused on the Iranian ports rather than on shutting down the entire strait for all global commerce. U.S. officials have stressed that shipping to and from non-Iranian ports should not be impeded, an attempt to portray the operation as targeted, not a blanket closure of a global choke point. Still, shipping patterns can change rapidly when insurers, captains, and energy traders fear uncertainty. Even the perception of heightened risk can push up costs and alter routes, with knock-on effects that reach far beyond the region. Iran, for its part, has responded with threats that suggest it is prepared to widen the confrontation. Iranian officials have warned that attacks on Iranian harbors would trigger retaliation against ports across the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman. The stakes are amplified by the dense network of U.S. partners and military facilities in the region, conditions that can turn retaliation into a chain reaction. Iran's parliament speaker signaled defiance, saying the country would not capitulate under threats. Separately, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps warned that military vessels approaching the strait would be dealt with harshly, language that keeps open the possibility of direct confrontations at sea. As tensions rose, reports indicated a rapid buildup of U.S. military assets in the broader Middle East theater. The movement of additional aircraft and troops has been portrayed by observers as more than routine repositioning, suggesting preparations for contingents and seas ranging from maritime incidents to wider strikes or ground operations if the situation deteriorates. U.S. Navy imagery released in recent days has shown personnel preparing aircraft for nighttime operations across the region. The appearance of these images, alongside reports of increased tanker and refueling capacity in the area, has fueled speculation about sustained air operations because aerial refueling can extend the reach and endurance of strike aircraft, enabling longer missions in greater tempo. The information environment around the conflict has also been crowded with claims, counterclaims, and politically charged narratives. Russian messaging has sought to frame U.S. actions as reckless and destabilizing, while also positioning Moscow as a potential broker, or at least as a player with leverage over sensitive nuclear issues. That nuclear angle surfaced again with Peskov outlining a proposal Moscow says is still on the table. Russia is prepared to take control of IRA. Ends enriched uranium as part of a potential peace arrangement. The proposal, originally linked to President Vladimir Putin and communicated to multiple parties, is presented as a mechanism to reduce escalation and to address U.S. concerns about Iran's nuclear capabilities. But despite Moscow's insistence that the idea remains available, no agreement has been finalized and no transfer has taken place. In emphasizing that offer, Russia appears to be attempting two things at once: to demonstrate its influence with Tehran and to claim a constructive role in a crisis where Western powers have largely treated Moscow as an adversary. For Iran, any such proposal would raise questions of sovereignty, security guarantees, and whether relinquishing a sensitive stockpile would meaningfully reduce the pressure being applied by Washington. At the same time, Russia's ambassador in Tehran highlighted the deepening strategic relationship between Moscow and Tehran, pointing to a formal cooperation from Amy work intended to expand ties across multiple domains. In that framing, Iran's right to defend itself is reinforced, and Iran's nuclear program is described as peaceful and legitimate language that aligns with Tehran's own public position while clashing with long-standing U.S. and allied concerns. The evolving alignment between Russia and Iran is also unfolding against the backdrop of broader geopolitical strain, sanctions pressure, competing regional alliances, and a global economy that remains highly sensitive to energy disruptions. With every new escalation in the Gulf, the risk calculus shifts not just for Iran and the U.S., but for oil importing economies and for countries whose shipping and energy security depend on stable passage. For markets, the most immediate concern is whether the blockade reduces Iranian exports significantly and whether Iran responds by increasing pressure in and around Hormuz. Even if Washington insists that non-Iranian traffic will not be impeded, Mercursal's shipping decisions are shaped by perceived danger, not only by official declarations. A few high-profile incidents, seizures, drone attacks, missile threats, or clashes involving patrol craft could change behavior overnight. For diplomats, the central question is whether a new negotiation track can be revived quickly enough to prevent the blockade from becoming a permanent feature of the conflict. Back-channel efforts have been reported, including discussions about arranging a second round of U.S.-Iran talks following the collapse of prior negotiations. But diplomacy is racing against the logic of military posturing. Once forces are forward deployed and rules of engagement tighten, a single misread move can force leaders into decisions they did not intend to make. For the U.S. administration, the blockade is being sold as leveraged economic pressure designed to compel Iranian concessions. For Iran, it is being framed as an act of siege and aggression that justifies retaliation. For Russia, it is a moment to warn of global consequences, criticize American force-first policies, and insert itself as a proposed custodian of nuclear material in a potential deal. And for the region, the fear is that what begins as a targeted maritime operation could slide into something larger, a widening theater of strikes and counterstrikes, a rapid escalation around critical infrastructure, and a spike in economic costs that reaches from Gulf ports to consumers worldwide. The questions now hanging over the standoff are stark. Will the blockade remain a pressure tactic calibrated to avoid open war, or will it become the trigger for broader confrontation? Will talks restart quickly enough to contain the crisis, or will the military buildup harden positions on both sides? And if the rhetoric continues to climb, can any outside actor, whether Russia, regional mediators, or U.S. partners, prevent the next incident at sea from becoming the one that lights the fuse?